6-2 in the last vote in the Council of Ministers. We're going to need to do this, to succeed with this, to end total free movement. We're going to need the support of the European Parliament. Are you going to help Britain to end the free movement of peoples? I don't think so. Are we going to win 28-0 in the Council of Ministers? I don't think so. It isn't going to happen. We're whistling in the wind, and we are closer now to exit than ever. And for the rest of the EU, I suspect the next 5 years will bring endless misery for the southern Mediterranean Eurozone countries. That perhaps is reflected by the number of Italians we now have in our group. And what have we seen in the last 48 hours? We've seen naked militarism, with the EU flag being virtually goose-stepped round the yard. We've seen the European anthem, and actually, I'll tell you this, we now, the Eurosceptics, are the progressives. These two gentlemen had nothing to say today. It was the usual dirge-like dull, looking back to a model invented 50 years ago, and we're the ones that want democracy, we're the ones that want nation-state, we're the ones that want a global future for our countries, not to be trapped inside this museum. Thank you.
Mr Verhofstadt. Mr Verhofstadt, please settle down.
Herr Verhofstadt.
Mr Verhofstadt, please settle down.
Herr Abgeordneter.
There is a question from Mr Lamberts to you. Do you accept a question from Mr Lamberts?
Mr Farage, what are you doing here? What I heard is basically the speech of the opposition. Mr Verhofstadt. Mr Verhofstadt, I'd like some respect, please. Mr Farage, what are you doing here? What I heard is the speech of the leader of the opposition in the House of Commons. If you want to hold that kind of speech, get elected there. What are you doing here? The reason why you are speaking here is that you have enlisted continental Europeans in your group just to be able to boast as a British citizen who wants to get out of the European Union. If you want to be considered as the leader of a European political group, then make speeches of a European political leader. Thank you.
Well, Mr Lamberts, I have to say, you sound like somebody from the old communist era saying that if anybody else has a different point of view, clearly they're mentally ill or there is something wrong with them. What you're going to have to get used to, all of you, is the idea that across the political spectrum there are now more Eurosceptics in this Parliament than there have ever been, and many of them do not subscribe to ever closer union. They don't subscribe to that flag. They don't want a European anthem. They want a modern Europe where we can trade together, cooperate together and have mutual respect for each other. And I'll tell you this, Mr Lamberts, don't worry too much about my presence, because within the next 5 years I won't be here. All right?
Okay, vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. Next, for the non-attached, Madame Le Pen.
Yeah. Right then. Well, now I've heard what the co-presidents have said from the EPP, S&D, ALDE, GUI and so forth. You know, there are the blind and there are those who don't want to see. So a new wind is blowing in this hemicycle, and it's not thanks to you, Mr. Schulz. There's a breath of fresh air now, of freedom, and we are trying to fight the anti-democratic, brutal, disconnected Europe. This is being called into question more and more by our citizens, and this is also against the political machinations. This has to do with transatlantic agreements, ACTA, and also agreements between the Liberals, the S&D, and the EPP, and that's basically how Juncker became the head of the Commission. It was basically a fait accompli. And now you're trying to tell European citizens that their vote really counts. That actually really makes people laugh. And it's a shame for them because the voters were fleeced once again. It's very nice to see all of you back there talking to the voters and now voting for the most sectarian socialists, the worst of ultra-liberalists, now as your president. Now, we're here, and we're here to denounce this very obvious collusion. We want to fight against poverty, unemployment, austerity, which you and those in this hemicycle represent. This mandate will not be very smooth going.
Vielen Dank. Zur Geschäftsordnung.
On the point of order, Mr. Glezos. Microphone for Mr. Glezos.
Ξαναβρίσκομαι ύστερα από 30 χρόνια.
We've heard.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have been sent to the European Parliament by Greek voters and electors